Okay, so moving forward here, we're going to do image number 2. So as I said, we're going to open this. So go File, Open. In your Drive download folder, which you already downloaded off the website, you're going to go to image 3. I know it seems funny, we're working on image 2, but we're using image 3. Obviously, this photo is like not the world's greatest. It's certainly not a Pulitzer Prize winning photo, but it is a basic photo that has an object that we need to remove out of that photo. That light, that flash stand and flash are quite distracting to the photo and don't need to be there. So what we want to do is we could use very similar to what we did the other day when we removed blemishes. You could use the spot healing brush tool, and I'm just going to do it quick and show you why I don't like to use it. I'm going to duplicate this layer here just by dragging it down to the new layer button. That gives me 2 versions of it, and I can turn off the background one and make sure that I don't wreck our original. If I was to just paint on top of this using the spot healing brush, the way that this spot healing brush tool interprets the data is a little weird. It's it works similar to the clone stamp tool in the sense that it duplicates things and moves it around, but it creates these weird little wavy blurs and things. So if I just go Control Z and back up, instead of using the spot healing brush tool, we're going to go here and we're going to use the Lasso tool or the Lasso tool. And we're actually just going to make a selection around this stand and flash. And once you go all the way around and let go, you'll be able to see what I call the marching ants. So it's this little dotted ants that wander their way around your image. And all you have to do then at that point is you can simply right click and you can say fill, and we want to do a content aware fill. And this content aware fill will now look at the background, look at the surrounding area, and it will take out that image. And it does a much better job, I find, doing it like that. Is it perfect? No. But it does a really good job of trying to interpret the data and take out that light stand. Okay, not every photo is going to work, right? We can't just here, let's take out the girl. That's not going to work, right? If I lasso tool around her, because there's too big of a space for the computer to try to interpret, right? So it tries to fill grass where there should be a fence, and it doesn't know what's going on behind the girl, right? Whereas open areas, it works much, much better. So this file, we're going to go File, Save As, and save it as a PSD, but we're going to call this we'll just call it image 2 so we know what's going on. We'll go in order. Really quickly, so you don't get confused, some of you, I think, may have labeled some of your other pictures with different names instead of image 1, image 2. So let's quickly open up your, just go to your My PC or This PC button. Mine, it shows up in my Start menu. I don't know where it shows up on yours, but you can then go there and go to wherever you saved your files. And we want, the one is obviously image 2. If we click on this little display items using the large, notice how they don't show up. The PSDs won't show up as actual images because Windows can't interpret the Photoshop documents. So did I mention the other day about using Adobe Bridge? You guys remember that? Okay. So instead of using Windows Explorer here, let's use Adobe Bridge. So open up the program that is called Adobe Bridge. It should be an orange button with a square BR. And when we go to the same place, so if I go back to my F drive and I go to my ComTech folder and I go to block 3, now all those PSDs that we've been creating, they all start to show up here for me to see what's going on. So I'm going to call this Acne Confidence one that I finished off the other day. If I double click on a photo, it will automatically open up in Photoshop. Whereas if what I tell people to use is the right click and then you say rename. So this would be just image 1. You can do it in Windows, it's exactly the same, but you can't see what the file is. So if you've misnamed it, you'd have to open the file to see what it is. Whereas in Adobe Bridge, we can view the thumbnails of those files right in Adobe Bridge. And you can control the size of those thumbnails. There's a little slider at the bottom here. I can make them really huge. I can slide them down, make them super small. Whatever you need, whatever works the best for your workflow. So this way we get image 1, which is the girl. Image 2 should be the fixed version of the girl standing in the grass. Okay, so now that image 2 is finished, we are going to move on and start image 3. So what we got to do is close this and we will go File, Open, and we are going to do image 3, which is the John Wall edit here. So open up this image. Should be John Wall back when he was in Kentucky. He's doing really well these days, but not playing for Kentucky anymore. We are going to have some fun and create a mask that gives us the ability to not only control the color of his jersey, but also ultimately change the color of the overall picture. So a few different things here when learning about masks and how they relate to pictures. You can do a lot of different things. In Photoshop CC, they have what are called adjustment layers. So if I go into this panel here that says adjustments, it's going to allow me to apply any one of these adjustment layers to this picture. So I could adjust the hue and saturation. If I click on this, it's going to create a new hue and saturation layer. Now, I can globally affect all the colors on the entire picture, or if I chose to, I could set this to be some funky color here, and I can actually take out all the weird green bits and leave just the pink on his jersey. So I would do that by adjusting this mask. So this hue and saturation layer by default has what's called a mask over top of it. Okay, and what that does, it allows us to non-destructively, so we're not going to mess up the original photo. All these adjustments are being made on top, kind of as an overlay, if you will. So the way you adjust a mask is simply by clicking on that mask layer and then using your brush tool, whether you're using black ink or white ink, allows you to make different changes. So I'll paint where it's really obvious here with black. If I paint right in the middle of his Kentucky jersey, it's going to show through, kind of making a hole in that mask and show through the original color that we had from his jersey. Well, in this case, we want to go around his head, his arms, his hands and stuff here to get rid of the green, but keep the pink, because we like the way that those tones work together to give us this pink color. So it's going to take a second, and you're definitely going to want to zoom in to do this. So I'll zoom in here quickly. Just use the zoom tool. Come in a little closer. And then with a small brush, and we can talk about hardness about the brush here. If you have a really hard, so 100% brush, when you make your marks, it's going to be a defined, very defined circle. Whereas if you go to the hardness of 0, now your brush is quite soft. You don't have a hard edge to it. You can get into those settings simply by right-clicking on your mouse and it will bring up the brush settings when you have the brush tool selected. You can also get into those same settings at the top here with this drop down. Click the little arrow and you've got your size and your hardness. Okay, so we need to just go in here and paint out everything that we don't want to be green anymore. And it will take a second. I usually use a small brush, get in close, do the detail work first, and then once you've gotten that done, you can use a larger brush to fill in the rest. A handy tip is if you use this, while you're brushing something, you can hit the space bar and this hand will pop up and it will actually allow you to drag the picture around so that you can then continue painting out the items that you do not want anymore. Okay, again, I can zoom out. If I click the Z key will give me the zoom tool, and then I click the Alt will give me a minus. So now I can recenter myself on his arm, zoom back in again, space bar, move it down. If I select B on the keyboard, gives me the brush tool back again. The left square bracket to make my brush a little smaller. I'm going to do the detail stuff here. If you had like a tablet stylus, obviously it would make life a little easier for yourself, but it is definitely not mandatory. If you just have a bit of a steady hand, you can usually do it pretty good with a mouse. Sometimes what will happen is I'll actually overpaint because it's easier to go this way, and then I will switch to the white color and put back in the mask or what I've accidentally painted out. Depending on what I'm doing, sometimes that works better to go from left to right as opposed to right to left. Okay. Paint out all this detail stuff here. And for today, this doesn't have to be perfect. We just want to get the concept, knowing how to create a mask and knowing how to manipulate it using the brush tool. Alrighty, and then we would continue to paint out things, make the brush a little bigger. We're going to go down here by his hand. Now you get some of the same green tone on the armband here. Well, this is technically white-ish, so we could take this out as well and just paint over top of that, masking that out. And then we don't really want him to look like the Hulk, so we're going to keep going here on his hands. This is where a bit of a harder brush helps in terms of getting all the details, but not over painting too much and having too much of the original show up here. Okay. Now I'm going to leave the basketball green at the moment, and I will show you a trick here in a moment. So keep painting out the hands here. This does take a little bit of time, but it is not that hard. So keep chipping away at it here. Give ourselves a nice here. Make this a little bigger. Alrighty. So we've gone all the way around. We have a jersey color and a ball color that are two totally different colors than what they were. I can go back and select this little icon here, this shaded icon, and I can make adjustments now to that hue and saturation layer. And if you notice, it will just adjust only the jersey color and the ball kind of independent of each other. You can adjust the saturation, like make things look stronger in terms of the color, more defined, or you can take the saturation out and you can take the color completely out of those different areas of the picture. So what we're going to do, just for fun, is we're going to do a selective color similar to what you see oftentimes in magazines and stuff, where you've got the picture of the girl and she just has red lips or whatever, and the rest of the picture is black and white. So to do that, though, we have a little bit too much information in our mask here. We've masked out all of John Wall and his body, and really what we want is the reverse of that. So there's some cool tricks you can do, not the least of which is this mask can be inverted. So if you just select invert here, it will switch the mask so that now everything that is affected by the mask or is showing through is essentially the reverse of what we just had. So now I'm switching the colors on his arms and not on the jersey and the basketball and everything else. So I don't have to now repaint around his hands. I can do what I want to do, which is I want to take the saturation out completely and make it gray, essentially, or grayscale. What I'll need to do is add in the bit on the bottom here from his jersey and his arms, but none of those are super accurate. Just this little bit by the ball here is going to be a little bit tricky. So I go back to my mask layer. I'm going to zoom in, take my brush. I'm just going to add in a bit here. Now, keep in mind that because we've inverted it, we need to paint with white now, so that white is what's taking away the colors, because we're adding to that mask there. So I'm just going to do that little bit of detail work first. Come down on the bottom of the ball here. Do a little bit underneath the ball. And now I can zoom back out with a big brush and just fill in the rest of here, getting rid of the rest of the jersey color. And we're left with just the orange ball and a really cool stylized photo like you'd see in a magazine if we were doing some sort of an advertisement or whatever. So when that's finished, you're going to do a file, save as. You're going to save it as image 3. And that image 3 file, make sure it says a PSD. This is block whatever block you are. Image 3. And then hit save. And you are off to the races then. We are going to start image 4 now. So if you're finished with image 3, you can close that down for now. We don't need it. We're going to go File, Open. And again, from our Drive download folder. This time we are going to open the 6877630 summer landscape photo. Okay? Should be a nice big picture with a big huge fluffy tree in it. Similar to the previous tutorial, we are going to cut out this tree. There's a few different ways that we could do this. Obviously, the first one being using the Lasso Tool and going around it kind of sketchy like this, right? Or what also sometimes works really well is using the Quick Selection tool. So if we use the Quick Selection tool, we can quickly select the tree and most of its leaves in a little bit more accuracy. Now it may jump, your tool might jump outside and jump like that to the sky. All you have to do is hold the Alt key on your keyboard, and while you're clicking, it'll minus away from that quick selection. So what I found with things like this where there's branches or there's weird little bits and pieces that are kind of sticking out, what sometimes works really well is to just blindly kind of go way outside, and then when you bring it back, it will sometimes jump. It'll do a better job of jumping to the edge of those branches or whatever you're trying to take out of the photo. Okay, and then similar to the previous example, all we have to do is right click, and we are going to fill this, and we are going to use a content aware fill. And when we do that, it should magically disappear our tree, and we can deselect this now. So Control D gets rid of those marching ants. Now, if you notice, it didn't do a perfect job, right? Everyone would agree it's kind of a little bit sketchy looking, and it doesn't quite look perfect. So one of the ways that we can fix this is by using what's called the clone stamp tool. So it's, what is it here? For the 9th one down, is it? It looks kind of like a stamp, and it says it's the clone stamp tool. Now the clone stamp tool is a little bit funny in the sense that you have to be on the proper layer. The clone stamp tool doesn't work so well if you're not on the right layer. But essentially what the clone stamp tool will do for you is it allows you to duplicate a selected area. So I'll show you a little example here before we use it, because it works better if you see the full thing happening. So I'm going to open up this landscape photo. Everybody agrees we have a tree here, one single tree in the middle of our photo, or well, not the middle, but off to the side, right? The clone stamp tool, what happens is when I hold the Alt key on the keyboard, I can select the center of this tree, and now I have a duplicate version of that tree. So I could literally move over here and click and basically grow another tree. But I could also do the same thing if I go Alt click. I could make a series of trees simply by moving along. Now I have to keep selecting Alt because if I don't, in the original photo there was nothing here. So when I move my mouse over, it's trying to duplicate nothing. So wherever your cursor is that you start your cursor, so if I click here and go Alt and I click up at the top, now I can actually add in another set of clouds and it will duplicate exactly whatever the plus sign is over top of. So in this case, I could come down here and it's not lined up, so I can't directly copy this tree. But if I hold Alt and make a new selection, I can now copy the tree over here again. Okay, so we're creating multiple different objects basically by using essentially a stamp, exactly what it says. So if we take that back to the one we were going to fix here, and I select Alt somewhere along this horizon line that's properly done. So this is somewhere where I like. So if I hold Alt and I select here, I can now move down my image and click a couple times and it will blend that horizon in and it'll make it seamless. It'll take out the shadow. It'll take out the little bumpy bits. I can do the, thank you. I can do the same as well in the clouds here. I can Alt click. I may not want such a giant brush, but I can now click and move bits and pieces of the sky to fill in these little awkward things. Now, obviously, you don't want to take a piece of blue sky and put it where blue sky shouldn't be. You need to make sure that you're taking a bit and pieces of white or whatever will help blend it in the best. So try using the clone stamp tool there. It's a really cool tool. It allows you to duplicate things and move things along to get rid of different objects in your background. So now for starting with image 5, we're going to bring in another picture and we're going to start doing a little bit of a miniature composite or bringing multiple images together to create one new image. So if we go to File and we're going to say Place Linked, we're going to place this image 2637. So it's a picture of a girl on a white background. Now, obviously, not every picture that you use will be nice and clean like this and have a white background and be easy to cut out the photo, but this particular one seems to work pretty good. So, when you bring this in, keep in mind that we're going to just scale this down a little bit. So don't make it so big. We need to just shrink her down. We want it to look a little bit funny, but not like she's some sort of giant Sasquatch kind of crazy person. So size it something relative to this so that it looks like she's somewhat proportioned to the picture. It's never going to be perfect, but do your best. Now keep in mind when you're scaling her, you want to do it from the corners and you want to hold the shift key. You don't want to mess up the proportions of her body. If I pull on the side, it makes her really wide. If I make her like this, super skinny. Similarly, I can stretch her and make her really tall or really short. All of those kind of mess with the proportions of the original photo. So make sure that when you do your file place, that you hold the shift key and you bring it down from the corner to maintain that proportion, to make sure she doesn't get squished. Once you have her placed in there in the right place, feel free to hit the enter key and that will confirm your selection. You can also hit the check mark at the top and that will do the same thing. It will confirm where she is. Okay, so here we's a going. So now that we have the image placed into the position that we sort of want it to be put in, we're going to take out the background of this girl's layer. So of the image that we just placed into the image, we're going to take out the background. Now the easiest way that I know of is to again use the quick selection tool. So we want to select the girl, her hair, and obviously her feet and arms and all that kind of stuff, but try to avoid selecting the white. Now, what's going to work great is if we zoom in just a little bit. So take your zoom tool, the magnifying glass, and we just want to zoom in on her so that she kind of fills up the screen. Doesn't have to be crazy close, but enough that you can see her and the white background and sort of see what's going on when you're working here. And then we're going to take the quick select tool. So this fourth one down is the quick selection tool. And simply make sure that you have a reasonably good sized brush, but not super huge, right? You don't want it to be bigger than the size of her leg. And if I select here, the quick selection tool will see that this is all generally the same color. It's all black, and it will select that for me. And then I just go up to her toe. It selects her whole foot, the yellow on her pants, and then subsequently I just keep moving around the image, selecting the different parts. Now, where it gets a little weird is on her hair here, because I want to get all of the strands and individual fibers of hair as best as I possibly can. So I'm actually going to select a little bit extra of the hair and kind of be a little bit outside that shape. Now I don't need all of this white in here, so I'm going to hold the Alt key and take a little bit away, come around here. But if you notice, now I've got nicely selected the hair as well as the full hair that's flying in front of her face. Okay? The next step is to refine this, is to make this selection even better, even more accurate. So we're going to click the tool at the top here. There's a button that says Select and Mask. Okay, so once we've done our generic selection, we go to the top and we say Select and Mask. When we do that, it brings up this new set of tools on the right-hand side. So we can very easily select this transparency slider and see what did the original look like, and then what is it going to look like when I get rid of the background, just by sliding this back and forth. Okay. Now I'm doing the view that shows it on a what's called an onion skin or like a transparent layer. You can have different views. Personally, I don't see how these are more beneficial. I like the layer, either the onion skin one or on the layers just as it is, so that I can see accurately kind of what's going on, right? Whichever one of these is your preference, you're more than welcome to use it. I'm going to keep with the onion skin one. And I'm going to leave my transparency set to 100 so that I can see what the finished image will look like. Okay? If you notice, there's a weird kind of white glow around her body still. We want to get rid of that. So we're going to go into edge detection and drop this arrow down. And we're going to give this photo what's called a smart radius. So this smart radius, when I check this off and I bring up this radius a little bit, say to 10 pixels, it's just going to smooth out where we made that selection. So if you notice, that weird kind of glow has now gone away. The smart radius tool and this edge detection here are really good for people with hair or just in general for bodies and things to take them out because it does it in a smooth, controlled manner. Okay? Now, if you look on the left-hand column, there's 5 different tools here. There's a magnifying glass. So in this case, I'm going to use this zoom tool to just pop in a little bit closer so I can see what's going on with this troubled area here where we've got the white around her hair kind of sticking out still. And then I'm going to use this tool called the Refine Mask tool. And what this tool does, it's really cool. If I click, I want a bit of a bigger brush. So I need a brush that's big enough to kind of go around the front of her face and in around this area. And if I click outside of my current selection, so somewhere where I've already said I don't want this color, and I start to click and then paint over top of her hair, the computer will actually say, oh, he wants to get rid of more of the white. So when I click here to start, and now as I paint, it gets rid of all that white distraction color that's not supposed to be there. And then I do the same thing in the front here. I'm going to take that and I'm going to click in front and I'm going to paint out all the white around the front of her hair, over top, and in by her arm. So now I get a much, much, much cleaner selection that doesn't have any issues to it. The last sort of step in this area or in this picture, what to do is to just quickly double check it. Make sure that you have no other hidden areas that have disappeared or that it looks weird. Okay. I'm now going to go to the output settings here. And I want to output this to a new layer with layer mask. Okay, and when I output this to a new layer with layer mask, when I select this option, and then I select OK, it will now pop back into my regular editing area. Whoops, not the one I wanted to click on. It will now pop back into my regular picture, but if you notice, I now have no background around her, and I've got a nice new layer that's been created with a layer mask that I could make adjustments to if I needed to down the road. I'd be able to make more adjustments. Okay, so I will leave it at that for today. Class is going to be done in like 2 seconds here or whatever. So we're going to stop recording and stop this for today, and then we'll finish it up tomorrow.